David had built a life of success and comfort, but none of it filled the emptiness left behind when his wife passed away. His home, once full of laughter, had grown painfully quiet, save for the small footsteps of his daughter, Lily. At just 8 years old, she carried a grief far too heavy for her tiny shoulders. He tried to be both mother and father, but he could see she needed more, someone who could guide her with a gentle hand, love her with patience, and bring light back into her days. One sunny afternoon, David found Lily sitting cross-legged on the plush carpet of their living room, cradling an old photo of her mother. He knelt beside her, his hand resting softly on her back. "Sweetheart," he said with a tremor in his voice, "I think it's time we find someone who can be here for us, someone who can be a mother to you." Lily looked up, her big brown eyes filled with a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Then he added the words that would change everything. "And I want you to choose." It wasn't an idea born from wealth or power, it came from love and respect for the little girl's heart. He wanted her to feel safe, to know her voice mattered. For a moment, Lily just stared at him, clutching the photo tighter. She wasn't thinking about fancy clothes, grand parties, or the kind of women she'd seen in magazines. Deep down, she longed for something much simpler, someone who could make her feel like her mother still lived in the warmth of the home, even if in a different form. David didn't know it yet, but giving Lily that choice would set in motion a chain of moments that would transform all of their lives forever. The following Saturday, the grand living room was filled with the scent of fresh roses and the quiet clink of fine china. One by one, 5 women arrived, each dressed in silks and diamonds that shimmered under the chandelier. They greeted David with air kisses and poised smiles, but their attention soon turned to Lily. They came bearing glossy gift bags, wrapped boxes tied with gold ribbons, and dresses so fine they looked like they belonged in a museum. One woman promised a summer in Paris, another spoke of ponies and private beaches. Lily accepted each gift with a polite "thank you," her small hand stroking the expensive fabrics, but her heart felt strangely heavy. She had been taught to be kind, but inside she was confused. These women barely knew her, yet they spoke as if they could buy her happiness. Their smiles seemed polished, their voices rehearsed, and though she tried, she couldn't feel the warmth she longed for. As the ladies competed for her attention, Lily's eyes kept wandering past the glitter and perfume, toward the far corner of the house. Through the open doorway, she could see Ruth, the housekeeper, quietly moving about the kitchen. Ruth was stirring a pot on the stove, humming softly to herself, her apron dotted with flour. She didn't glance toward the parlor, didn't try to catch Lily's eye, and yet something about her felt steady, safe. While the guests spoke of yachts and champagne, Lily thought of the times Ruth had bandaged her scraped knees or tucked an extra cookie into her lunch. The sparkle of jewels paled in comparison to the quiet warmth coming from the kitchen. She didn't know why, but she felt her gaze drawn to Ruth again and again, like a compass finding its true north. The afternoon wore on, the parlor still buzzing with laughter and the tinkling of teacups, but Lily's mind was somewhere else entirely. She waited until the women were deep in conversation with David, their voices rising and falling like a well-rehearsed song. Quietly, she slipped off her chair and padded down the hallway, her small slippers making no sound against the polished floor. In the kitchen, the world felt different, slower, warmer, alive with the smell of simmering chicken soup. Ruth stood at the stove, stirring with a wooden spoon, steam curling around her face. On the counter sat fresh herbs, chopped carrots, and a loaf of bread cooling beside the window. It was simple, unpolished, and yet it reminded Lily of home before everything changed. Ruth turned when she heard the soft shuffle of footsteps. "Hey there, sugar," she said, her deep, kind voice wrapping around Lily like a blanket. She noticed the girl's faraway eyes, the slight slump of her shoulders. Setting the spoon aside, Ruth knelt so they were eye to eye. Her hands, still warm from the stove, gently rested on Lily's. "I can't replace your mama," she said softly, her voice steady but tender. "But I can listen. And I can care. Every single day." There was no glitter, no grand promise, just a truth so pure it made Lily's chest tighten. In that quiet kitchen, she felt more seen than she had all afternoon. The rich gifts in the other rooms suddenly seemed small, almost silly. Here, in the smell of soup and the warmth of Ruth's hands, she found something no one else had offered, love that asked for nothing in return. Evening settled over the mansion, the golden light of the chandeliers casting a warm glow on the polished wood and velvet drapes. The 5 women sat together in the parlor, their perfect posture and confident smiles giving the air of a competition they were sure they had already won. David stood beside Lily, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Well, sweetheart," he said with a soft smile, "have you made your choice?" The room seemed to pause, the clinking of teacups silenced, the women leaning forward ever so slightly. Their eyes sparkled with anticipation, each certain her gifts and promises had left the deepest impression. Lily took a slow breath and looked around the room, her small hands fidgeting. Then, without hesitation, she turned her gaze toward the kitchen doorway, where Ruth had quietly stood, uncertain if she even belonged in this moment. "I choose her," Lily said, pointing straight at Ruth. Gasps rippled through the room. One of the women shifted uncomfortably, another's painted smile faltered. David blinked, taken aback. "Why, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice careful, curious. Lily walked over to Ruth and took her hand, her little fingers curling around the older woman's calloused ones. "Because," she said with simple certainty, "she loves me without trying to buy me." The words hung in the air like a bell's clear ring, soft, but impossible to ignore. Ruth's eyes glistened, her lips trembling into a smile. David's heart swelled, not with pride in his daughter's choice, but with the realization that she understood something even he had almost forgotten: true love can't be wrapped in ribbons or measured in wealth. It's felt in the quiet acts that ask for nothing in return. For a moment, the room was utterly still, as if the weight of Lily's words had pressed pause on the world. David looked at his daughter, then at Ruth, and something inside him shifted. The polished charm of the women around them faded into the background, their expensive perfume and glistening jewels suddenly meaningless. He saw Ruth as Lily did, not just the housekeeper, but the quiet anchor who had kept their home from falling apart when grief threatened to swallow them whole. Tears welled in his eyes, blurring the edges of the scene before him. He crossed the room slowly, each step carrying the weight of realization. When he reached Ruth, he didn't speak right away. Instead, he took her other hand, enclosing her between himself and Lily. "You've already been part of this family," he said at last, his voice thick. "It's time we make it official, not just for me, but for her." Ruth's eyes widened, her breath catching. "David," she whispered, as though afraid the moment might break if she spoke too loudly. "I'm not asking you to fill someone else's shoes," David said gently. "I'm asking you to walk beside us in your own." Lily squeezed Ruth's hand, her smile breaking into pure, unguarded joy. And then, in that warm circle of hands and hearts, the 3 embraced. For the first time in months, Lily's laughter rang through the house, not polite, not practiced, but bright and real, spilling into every quiet corner that had been starved of love. The walls seemed to breathe again, not with the echo of loss, but with the promise of a new beginning, one built on kindness, selflessness, and the kind of love money could never buy.